Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ms. Maricia Pemberton, and I am an executive officer at the Ministry of Community Development, Gender Affairs, and Social Services, and I am also one of your CARICOM Youth Ambassadors. I want to welcome you all to the UNICEF Summit, the Convention on the Rights of a Child. 30 years we're celebrating. And I'm here to introduce our chairpersons today. But before we do that, could we please stand for the singing of the national anthem, which will be sung by the Sandy Point Preschool, McKnight Daycare, and Industrial Site Daycare students. Could we have the kids, please? Can go in front, stay in front, come behind. Come up. You got it.
Our country, where peace above thy children stand free, on the strength of greater love, with God another strong God, sacred standing between, our nation bow together, with a common destiny. As followers we stand for justice and liberty with wisdom and truth. We will serve and honor thee. No sword, no fear shall conquer, for God will surely defend his nation forever to posterity.
Thank you, children. That was wonderful. Could we give them one round of applause again, please? Thank you. Also, could you remain standing for the prayer, which will be done by Ms. Tiana Bori.
Let us pray. Oh Heavenly Father, we bow before you this evening with an attitude of gratitude, thanking you for life, thanking you for being able to bring us here, oh God, to commemorate such a momentous occasion, oh God. We ask that you'll continue to bless those masterminds who would have saw it fit, oh God, to put children first. We thank you for the 30 years that you would have brought us, knowing full well that you can take us another 30 years and beyond. All these things we
Seated. Now I will introduce the chairpersons for this evening. We have Ms. Dejine Diaz, and she is an 18-year-old young lady who came through Project Viola, which is a teen mother program at the ministry. A young lady who's doing wonderfully, who has represented St. Kitts at conventions in St. Lucia and in Trinidad, and who is making her way through youth development. She will be here, and she'll be joined by Mr. Devon Cornelius, who is a member of the CARICOM Youth Ambassador Corps. So he works along, I work with him, he works with me in the program. And he's from Nevis, and he works at the Nevis Television. And both of them are 18 years old, and they're excited, and they are ready to be your chairpersons for this evening. So please welcome them to the stage.
A pleasant good evening to all. Welcome to the opening ceremony of the 30th anniversary of the Convention of the Rights for Child.
At this time, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Deputy Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Sean K. Richards, who is also the Minister of Education and Youth, the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, Minister with responsibility for agriculture, lands, and cooperatives, the Honorable Wendy Phipps, Minister with responsibility for health, social services, gender affairs, and community development.
Okay, we would like to welcome Joel Connor for the opening remarks from Probation and Child Services in St. Kitts.
Chairs, allow me to adopt the protocol that have already been established. My name is Gerald Connor, and I will be giving the opening remarks as a member of the Department of Probation and Child Protection Services, where I work as a probation officer. Good evening, all. I am pleased to be here today for this formal opening ceremony of this Children's Summit in commemoration of the 30th anniversary of St. Kitts and Nevis signing and ratification of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. This evening represents a hallmark occasion which has brought us together, assembled here in historic Warner Park on the eve of the significant date, July the 24th, on which in 1990, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis was first in line among OECS member states and only second to Belize among CARICOM countries to ratify the UN CRC. And when the treaty was open for signing in January, was leading the way, having signed on the 26th day of January that same year. This is undoubtedly a remarkable achievement and one which continues to bring wide recognition to our nation for its unswavering commitment to the promotion and safeguarding of child's rights. Any doubt about the significance of the treaty and the investment of the Federation in ensuring that St. Kitts and Nevis became a state party without any delay was put to rest in 1996 when the UN Committee in Geneva showered our delegation with much applause. It is not merely by accident that UNICEF has decided to honor and recognize this achievement by coming to our beautiful federation to host such a landmark event in observance of this achievement. UNICEF have always, on every appropriate occasion, sought to highlight this achievement and to document the pride of place held by St. Kitts and Nevis. In this light, the contribution of Ms. Heather Stewart, UNICEF Child Protection Specialist, must be illuminated. Mrs. Stewart has been and continues to be a tower of strength and support before and during these 30 years. Let us show a deep appreciation with a round of applause. The protection of our children and to ensure that they grow in an environment which is conducive to their upbringing, where they can recognize their full potential, is the main guiding principle of the CRC, which today still remains the most widely ratified UN Human Rights Treaty. As the United Nations have proclaimed that childhood is entitled to a special care, protection, and to allow growth in an atmosphere of happiness with love and understanding. Over the years, St. Kitts and Nevis and other OECS countries have been making significant strides to ensure that countries carry out the mandate to ensure conformity with the articles of the UNCRC. Some of which St. Kitts have undertaken includes, and I note the involvement of UNICEF, not including the scores of national, regional, and international workshops fully funded by UNICEF, and all of which St. Kitts were invited. 1996, Deputy Prime Minister led delegation to Geneva to present UNCRC report. In 1998, training and formal embodiment of a sexual offense unit within the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force. And also in 1998, the inauguration of the National Foster Care Program, and also a 2-month study tour to the UK to observe foster care. 2001, establishing the Probation and Child Protection Services. 2006, consultation advancing child protection and keeping the promise. Also in 2006, Chief Justice Sir Dennis Byron addresses conference and juvenile justice reform. And 2008, draft of child protection protocol. In 2012, consultation for completion of the CRC report. 2012 again, creation of the Special Victims Unit, which deals specifically with child abuse and domestic violence. In 2012, review of the foster care program, establishing the New Horizon Co-ed Rehabilitation Center, amendment of Maintenance of Children Act, amendment of Guardianship, Custody, and Access of Children. In 2013, enactment of Children Care and Adoption Act, enactment Child Justice Act, amendment of Status of Offenses Act. In 2017, consultation on child protection protocol. In 2008, launch of the Case Management Information System for reported cases. 2019, sitting of the Child Justice Committee, and also a study tour to the UK of Child Justice Committee and Child Protection. And of course, before the year is finished, we'll be launching the Liana Project for missing and or runaway children, and also a study tour of Adoption Committee to Trinidad. Also, we are currently reviewing of the operational manual for New Horizon Rehabilitation Center, which is also funded by UNICEF. And it must be noted and placed in national spotlight the immeasurable contribution of our esteemed Governor General, Sir Tapley Seaton, while serving as Attorney General, took the Federation on a journey from signing the UNCRC to our subsequent ratification. This notable and highly recognized achievement we observe some 30 years later with this ceremony. It was His Excellency, then as Attorney General, who had set about to ensure that the Federation stood out among nations to pledge full commitment and without reservation to the UNCRC, and perhaps in an effort to guarantee timely demonstration of that commitment, in his capacity as Attorney General, identified and appointed Probation Officer Maurice Williams to be focal point for the UNCRC, with special directive to research the legislation and practice at that time which were in conformity with the convention. and to recommend appropriate measures for which to be adopted in preparation for signing ratification. Senior Magistrate Mr. John Lynch Wade, of blessed memory, provided invaluable support. With assistance provided by UNICEF, by commissioning of Attorney Mrs. Norma Ford to review the local effort, attended several UNICEF-funded workshops throughout the region, and many discussions and meetings at the chambers of the Attorney General is why we are here today to observe this achievement. It is more important than a footnote to add that throughout his tenure as Attorney General, His Excellency Tapley Seaton demonstrated more than a passing interest in the promotion, protection, and safeguarding of child rights, and remaining fully engaged with staff of the department, maintaining an open telephone line, attending every workshop and conference in which he was invited, and was never short on seeking advice and getting input on every bill pertaining to children and family. The occasion we are observing today as the first country in the OECS and second only to Belize in Caribbean to sign and ratify the UNCRC is due to no small measure to the vision and unrelenting effort of His Excellency Tapley Seaton. As we continue to strive towards making these the best time to be a child, we welcome each and every one of you, our young persons here today, and charge every one of you to full participation in this summit. And let your ideas, thoughts, and visions be known to ensure that we will keep your mandate in providing you with the tools to bring about your true potential and to fulfill your dream. There is still a long road to travel on this journey, much to be concerned over the levels of child abuse and neglect. We at the Ministry and at the Child Protection are not daunted by this task which lies ahead. Our passion is ignited, our enthusiasm sharpened, our commitment resolute. We will strive to get it right. As we embark towards the next milestone, the government still unwaveringly committed to the principle of putting all children first, one which ensures that the essential of children should be given high priority in the allocation of resources, in bad times as well as in good times, at the national as well as at the family level. Our current Attorney General, Honorable Vincent Byron, gave this assurance at a meeting held recently. Finally, we at the Department of Probation and Child Protection Services are steadfast in our commitment to ensure that each child enjoys the right to live and grow as a child and guarantee every opportunity to realize his or her optimum potential. We will not shrink from our efforts to safeguard and promote the best interests of all children to a proactive rights-based approach in making these the best times to be a child. I thank you and do make this summit memorable as we celebrate CRC 30 here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
I would like to thank Mr. Connor for those opening remarks. However, allow me to acknowledge the presence of some other government officials, including Vincent Hodge, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Daryl Lloyd, Chief Education Officer, Tom Buchanan, Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, Muriel Malfico, Deputy Representative for the UNICEF Office for the Eastern Caribbean area, Heather Stewart, Representative for St. Kitts and Nevis, Anna Innes, Executive Officer for UNICEF, as well as Patrick Knight, Communications Specialist. We have other stakeholder NGO groups, Special Advisor to the Minister of Youth, Vernon Connor, and other government officials.
Okay, now we will have a special presentation by the children of the Summit SKN Youths.
Hey everybody, I'm Treasure, and I'm here to tell you about something very important in our world. All rights and all rules tells how humans should behave towards each other. Rules and rights help us live good lives so that we can learn, develop, feel safe, and be happy and healthy. 30 years ago, St. Kitts and Nevis joined with other nations around the world to agree to human rights for children, and this was written down on a paper called the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The Convention on the Rights of the Child is a paper which lists all things every child should have to live and develop in a good manner and works just like a rule book on how to behave towards other children. We will soon hear about 11 of these rights. Today, 193 countries has accepted these rules of the convention. Today, we will celebrate the 30th birthday of the Convention on the Rights of a Child, right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And we are streaming this celebration around the world so thousands of other children can celebrate with us.
I have the right to protection from abuse and neglect.
I have the right to live with a family.
I have the right to equal opportunities.
I have the right to spiritual development.
I have the right to a quality education.
I have the right to clean water and electric power.
I have a right to guidance from a caring adult.
I have the right to health care and good nutrition.
I have the right to be heard and to participate in decisions.
I have the right to live in a stable, loving, and nurturing environment.
And I have a right to live in conditions of dignity and freedom.
Thank you for that special presentation from those young people from across St. Kitts and Nevis. We have all heard what their rights are. So what is your right? What do you have a right to do? You have a right to everything, what I say? Okay. I will now hand over to Ms. Diaz.
Now we'll have a dance presentation by the Synergy Movement.
Please give them a round of applause as they come.
You have rights, no matter where you go. But oftentimes, circumstances and people around us make you feel unwanted, unsafe, trapped. Synergy Movements is here to remind us all that we are free to move, free to express, free to have your own things. You have the right to seek a safe place. You have the right to move. No one can take away your human rights. Know your rights. Fight a little longer for your rights. You are not alone in your fight. Ladies and gentlemen, Synergy Movements in I'll Find You.
Just fight a little longer, my friend. It's all worth it in the end. But when you got nobody to turn to, just hold on and I'll find you. I'll find you. I'll find you. Just hold on and I'll find you.
I'm hanging on by a thread, and all I'm clinging to is prayers. And every breath is like a battle. I feel like I ain't come prepared. And death's knocking on the front door. Pain's creeping through the back. Fears crawling through the windows, waiting for them to attack. They say don't get bitter, get better. I'm working on switching them letters. But tell God I'ma need a whole lot of hope, keeping it together. I'm smiling in everyone's face. I'm crying whenever they lead a rope. They don't know the battle I face. They don't understand what I'm going through. The world trying to play with my soul. I'm just trying to find where to go. I'm trying to remember the way. I'm trying to get back to my home. But I can't do this on my own. That's why I'm just trusting in you. Cause I don't know where else to go. And I don't know what else to do.
Just fight a little longer, my friend. It's all worth it in the end. But when you got nobody to turn to, just hold on and I'll find you. Just fight a little longer, my friend. It's all worth it in the end. But when you got nobody to turn to, just hold on and I'll find you. I'll find you. I'll find you. Just hold on and I'll find you. I'll find you. I'll find you. Just hold on and I'll find you.
They say fear haunts you and pain hates. I say pain strengthens and fear drives faith. And I don't know all of the outcomes, don't know what happens tomorrow. But when that ocean of doubt comes, don't let me drown in my sorrow. And don't let me stay at the bottom. I feel like this hole is too deep to climb. I've been looking for a way out, but I settled for a peace of mind. Picking up the pieces of my life and hoping that I put together something right. Tell me all I got is all I need. Tell me you gon' help me stay and fight. The world tryna play with my soul. I'm just tryna find where to go. I'm tryna remember the way. I'm tryna get back to my home. But I can't do this on my own. That's why I'm just trusting in you. Cause I don't know where else to go. And I don't know what else to do.
No, don't let the fear make you feel like you can't fight this on your own. You know I'll be there for you no matter where you go. You'll never be alone. No, just fight a little longer, my friend. It's all worth it in the end. But when you got nobody to turn to, just hold on and I'll find you. Just fight a little longer, my friend. It's all worth it in the end. But when you got nobody to turn to, just hold on and I'll find you. I'll find you. I'll find you. Just hold on and I'll find you. I'll find you. I'll find you. Just hold on and I'll find you.
Let us give the Synergy Movement another round of applause for their wonderful performance.
This should be a special moment for us, as St. Kitts and Nevis was the first to sign off on this convention, the first in the OECS and the second in the Caribbean. Myself and DG, we traveled to Trinidad and Tobago last year in November, where we participated in a Young People's Symposium, the first of its kind, where we worked with members from UNICEF. I don't know if Miss Innes and Mr. Knight remember us, but we were part of the contingent from St. Kitts and Nevis. And so to be here for this 30th anniversary, it is a pleasure for us. Before I welcome Ms. Muriel Malfico, allow me to acknowledge our CARICOM Youth Ambassador, Mr. Dwayne Hendrickson from Nevis. And wherever he is, I'd like for him to stand and be recognized. Also, the acting director of youth for Nevis, Ms. Curtis Clark, and her youth development officers. Please stand and be recognized. Thank you. I will now welcome Ms. Muriel Malfico, and she is the Deputy Representative for the UNICEF Office for the Eastern and Caribbean area. Please welcome Ms. Malfico.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to the Masters of Ceremony for the warm welcome. Thank you to all the performers who have come before and given us such energetic, such creative presentations. I would like you to please join me in giving them a round of applause. I would like to take this time to, first of all, thank the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, which is represented by His Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister. Sir, we acknowledge your leadership and we appreciate your presence this evening. Thank you. I would like also to thank the organizing committee. I think you all agree with me that the preparations that have gone into this event, a lot of work has gone into this, so thank you to the organizing committee for a job well done. In addition, I would like to thank the vision that St. Kitts and Nevis has had in bringing to St. Kitts this week children from Anguilla. We have children from Anguilla who are sitting here in the audience. If you could just welcome them as well. Thank you. We have children from Antigua and Barbuda who are also in the audience. And lastly, we have children from Montserrat who are also in the presence. So, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, St. Kitts is demonstrating once again the fact that there is a strong solidarity in the Caribbean, and the fact that we don't only have people from St. Kitts, but we also have regional representation. That is a commitment to solidarity. It is a commitment to one Caribbean for our children. So congratulations. I would also like to thank everyone who is here, all of you. I would like to thank you for making time to be in this stadium this evening. You could have been elsewhere. You could have been doing other things, but you prioritized being here because you believe in the cause. You believe in what is happening here this evening. So give yourselves a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I am personally heartened to be here this evening. I am really delighted to be back in St. Kitts, 2 islands, 1 paradise. It is a pleasure to be here. 30 years ago, we've heard the story. St. Kitts led this sub-region in signing and ratifying the Convention on the Rights of the Child. That was a huge step. It was a bold step, and St. Kitts took the leadership in the Eastern Caribbean. Some of you might be asking, but why does it matter? Why is it important that this happened? It matters for a number of reasons. It matters because by signing, by ratifying the Convention on the Rights of the Child, St. Kitts and Nevis was telling the whole world, the entire world, that they will make sure that every child is protected, every child is educated, and every child is able to live a healthy and fulfilling life. So tonight, we are here to remember the promise. And I'm happy that the Deputy Prime Minister is here with the rest of the cabinet, representing once again the commitment of the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. We will hear more from children about their experiences with the Convention of the Rights of the Child and how they're experiencing it in their day-to-day life. That is not for me to tell you this evening, but I would like to leave you with 3 messages. The first message is to you, the children. If you are under 18, then I am talking to you right now. My message to you as a child who is under 18 is that let your voice be heard. This is your time. This is your moment. Be heard. Take your place. My second message is to the parents. I am one of the parents who are here, and to my fellow parents, I would like to address this comment to ourselves. As parents, let us make sure that we have strong families, because we cannot have strong countries with weak families. We cannot have a strong Caribbean with weak families. So to my fellow parents, I am calling on us to make sure that our families are strong and that they can provide a strong foundation for this generation to be the best that they can. So let us raise our children. Let us raise them in a safe and loving family environment. This is the gift, this is the legacy that we can leave to our children. I would like to also take the opportunity of the presence of the government to say to the government, and indeed to my own colleagues in UNICEF as development partners, that the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis, they shape and influence the future of these children. So every decision we make, it counts. And therefore, we have to make sure we make the right decisions that are in the best interest of the children that are here. And then lastly, I would like to address all of us by saying it takes a village to raise a child. We all have a role to play. Play your part. I will play my part. We should all play our part. So thank you once again, St. Kitts and Nevis, for taking the lead and showing the way. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ms. Malfico. And as she mentioned, UNICEF does not only assist children and young people in St. Kitts and Nevis, the OECS, and the wider CARICOM, but children all over the world. When myself and DeJean went to Trinidad last year, we went to this school in the capital, and we painted a school for special children. It was for a school, for the children, sorry, they had autism. And while we were there looking at these children, we then realized how privileged we are here in St. Kitts and Nevis. There is this quote I would like to quote from Nelson Mandela, who's the former president of South Africa. He says, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." And so to the different departments of education, youth, and sports across the OECS and CARICOM, it is very important for us to treat our children right and to make sure that plenty effort is given to the development of our children and, of course, young people.
Okay, we will now have a drumming presentation by the Youth Drum Corps.
Let's give them a round of applause as they come.
Another round of applause for the drummers, please. And to the drummers, we would like to say thank you.
We will now welcome the Honorable Wendy Phipps, Minister of State with responsibility for Health, Social Services, Gender Affairs, and Community Development. Please welcome Minister Phipps as she comes.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Much better. I know that we have acknowledged protocol very early on in our program. And this was ably done by our two youth chairpersons. Can we give them a round of applause for being brave enough to take on this global audience? At the same time, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister with responsibility for youth and education, the Honorable Sean Kenneth Richards, the Minister of Agriculture, Housing et al., the Honorable Eugene Hamilton. At the same time, we acknowledge once more the presence of Muriel Mafiko, our Deputy Representative for the Eastern Caribbean Office, Ms. Heather Stewart, who is no stranger to St. Kitts and Nevis, welcome back and welcome home. Ms. Stewart happens to be the UNICEF representative for St. Kitts and Nevis and would have served us over the years under various headings. The Executive Officer, Anna Innes, and Patrick Knight, the Communications Specialist. At the same time, I respect and acknowledge the presence of our two magistrates, Mr. Reynold Benjamin and Mr. Fitzroy Eddy, who is with us, and they represent part of our state agency group in terms of the court system that would have to interface on a regular basis with the Child Protection and Probation Services Board as we advocate for the rights of children. While I'm doing that, it would also be useful for me to acknowledge the presence of one of the board members who happens to be former Commissioner of Police, Mr. Austin Williams. And if there are other board members present who I don't see, my apologies to you. We recognize from the start of this evening's program that we were here in front of a local, a regional, and a global audience as it relates to the 30th anniversary for the signing of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis is incredibly heartened by the fact that UNICEF has chosen St. Kitts and Nevis as the venue to have this global celebration for the 30th anniversary. Other speakers before me this evening would have alluded to the fact that St. Kitts and Nevis would have been the first member state of the UN residing in the OECS sub-region to have ratified the convention. At the same time, we recognize that even although only 20 signatures would have been needed to start the process, there was a deluge of strong support, so much so that the first round of ratification included some 61 countries who would have signed on by January 26th of 1990. Among them were a number of other CARICOM states, some of which are represented here this evening by virtue of their flags, such as Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, Belize, Dominica, and Suriname. It is also necessary for us to use an occasion of this sort to commend the political leadership of St. Kitts and Nevis for being among the first countries to ratify this widely approved convention, which, according to the United Nations, is the most widely ratified human rights convention, which tells us of the incredible importance of you, our world's children. The record now reflects that some 196 countries would have ratified this convention, even though some of them may have stopped short of full ratification for various reasons and would have maintained reservations on certain issues within the 54-article set of items that make up the convention. One notable absence from the whole issue of ratification, unfortunately, is the United States of America. Even though they would have agreed to the convention in principle, they are yet to take it to the Senate or to the House of Representatives by the hand of the President to get it approved. And as the leader of the free world, we continue to advocate for the United States in ratifying what is a landmark convention when it comes to children's rights. Especially as we recognize that out of the world's population of almost some 8 billion people, our children globally represent 2.2 billion people. So it's not a small group of people, and it's a demographic that must be recognized and must be represented and must be respected for having their own voice, as Ms. Mafiko so ably said, as she pointed out the 3 messages she wanted to leave with us this evening. At the time when St. Kitts and Nevis would have ratified the convention, it would have been done under the leadership of our first Prime Minister, who also happens to be our only living national hero, Dr. the Right Honorable and Right Excellent Sir Kennedy Alphonse Simmons. Regrettably, he could not be with us this evening, but he is aware of this function and sends his regards. The other 2 members of his cabinet then, who would have been instrumental in ensuring that all of the requirements for ratification would have been met, would have been Dame Constance Mitchum, the former Minister of Health and Women's Affairs, and also the late Honorable Sidney Morris, who was our Minister of Education and also responsible for youth affairs at that time. We commend them for their solidarity, we commend them for their vision, and we commend them for their leadership in taking charge of the process with St. Kitts and Nevis signing on to what is perhaps the most groundbreaking set of rules and rights as it relates to how we should raise our children and protect them for future generations. The convention itself would have advanced the Declaration on Human Rights that would have been posited since 1923 by the League of Nations, which, as we all know, would have been replaced by the UN in 1948 following the end of 2 world wars. Of course, enshrined in those rights, in the Declaration on the Rights of the Child, would have been all of the aspects that still form the basis for what is our 54-article convention. And of course, the pace would have been stepped up during the last 10 years prior to the presentation of the convention and its approval at the UN General Assembly in 1989. And of course, that came with the full recognition that it was imperative for children who are a special class of persons unable to defend themselves to be well represented in an adult world. Previous speakers would have alluded to some of the core human rights. We also saw the parade of placards among some children who are here pointing out some of these rights which bear repeating. And while I'm on that subject, I just want to remind us of the basic definition of a child according to the UN, and it is simply that we refer to any person who is under the age of 18. These rights that are enshrined include the right to life, the right to education, the right to quality health care, to a name and an identity, to live in peace, to live in a world without hunger, to have the right to adequate shelter and protection by the state, and prevention from incarceration and imprisonment for offenses committed by children while they are under the age of 18. Much has been accomplished over the past 30 years in terms of what the UN member states would have done in order to operationalize the convention within their respective jurisdictions. And we commend all of the member states for the work that has been achieved. Some of these can be truncated as follows. The CRC would have influenced national and international legislation that are designed to protect the rights of children as individuals. There's also advocacy for a multi-agency approach to the development of children via such sectors as health, education, national security, and cultural development. Prevention of discrimination against children who are not property, whose views matter, and whose futures we as adults are called to secure. Ensuring that our world is looked after in a manner that is sustainable, given that one day we will pass it on to the children who are called to be its new leaders. Improved access to health care, including the reduction in child and infant mortality, increased immunization coverage, etc. The development of national agendas and youth policies. Our own country has kept step with this requirement, and I use this opportunity to commend the Honorable Minister of Education for the leadership role he has taken in bringing to fruition a national youth policy. Could we have a round of applause for Minister Richards on that score? Also enshrined in those rights and actions that have helped us to operationalize the CRC is ensuring that national budgetary allocations to programming for children's development would be happening on a consistent and annual basis, be it in education at the preschool, primary, secondary, and tertiary levels, in sports and leadership development, crime prevention, etc. Sadly, ladies and gentlemen, in 30 years, although we have seen and made great strides in terms of the advancement of children and the protection of their rights, we have also seen that there is an inherent failure to eliminate certain practices and evils and scourges that continue to stymie the development of the world's children. Some of our children are still subjected to the worst types of circumstances as a result of antisocial, predatory, or culturally ignorant mores of adults, children, and caregivers the world over. These criminal actions demand all of our attention so that the world's children can have the right to a peaceful, normal, productive upbringing that is conducive to their realization of all of their God-given potential. Some of these offenses against children include denial of access to education. We can point to the example of Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala Yousafzai of Pakistan, who would have almost gotten her head blown off many years ago for simply daring to teach young girls how to read. Failure to educate girls, that is another big one. Female genital mutilation as is practiced in certain African countries still. Child marriages, pregnancy among young girls, particularly by older men, resulting in irreversible reproductive damage to such young, undeveloped mothers. Some of these damages include fistulas, uterine prolapse, incontinence, and the need to wear diapers for the rest of your life, while being shunned by society for such medical problems which these children certainly did not bring upon themselves. Trafficking in children, child pornography, child prostitution, and in our own regional context, the recruitment by criminal gangs of our young men in particular, who go after children as young as the age of 9 years old. So we are practically talking grades 4 and 5 in the primary school system. And while I'm on this score, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the various explorers groups from around St. Kitts. Those of you who are in the audience, could you stand and let us give you a round of applause? All of the children who are here, some of them are in explorers groups, one most recently formed, I think in Newtown. Then there was one formed in Old Road recently, the Malfield group in Keon, and also in Sandy Point, soon to come on stream. Do we have any of these children here from the explorers groups? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the world over, the urgency of now demands that we do something about all of the scourges and crime against humanity that would continue to be visited on our global population of children. Our government is of the firm view that the pursuit of children's rights is inextricably linked to women's rights, particularly for us in the Caribbean, where women lead more than 50% of households as single mothers. Furthermore, we also recognize that what we face in terms of challenges to children and linking it to the rights of mothers also represents what we consider to be an existential threat. Because if women are leading families and their own rights are not being recognized, by extension, children's rights are being compromised as these same women are forced to head households while raising children on their own. Yet, in spite of this, in spite of the circumstances in which they may come into the world, be it in terms of family, culture, the society, finances, education, race, gender, or geopolitical circumstances, our children deserve a bright future full of wonderful possibilities. We need to continue the struggle and keep the flame burning brightly and more brightly and more brightly as we safeguard every right for every child. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister Phipps, for your remarks. Up next on the program, we'll have some musical entertainment by the Nevis Pan Ensemble from the Shazanda School of Music, which is from Nevis, and that group is headed by Mr. Rohan Claxton. So please welcome them as they bring to you a spectacular performance. Let's give them another round of applause. So all the Nevis people in the fans, in the stand, sorry, give them a round of applause for that spectacular performance. The Nevis Pan Ensemble. I will now invite the Acting Director of Youth in Nevis, and she will bring us the closing remarks. Miss Curtis Clark. Please welcome her as she comes to the podium. So let me hear the Nevisions in the house. Okay. Miss Clark, thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Chairpersons, please allow me to adopt the protocol that has been so ably established. Permit me just a few minutes of your time, my thoughts I would like to express. When I thought of the closing the closing remarks, and what would be a unique way to end, guess what I finally produced? This short little poem. The focus of this ceremony is to celebrate children around the world. We aspire to reach every boy and girl. 30 years is a tremendous milestone, no matter what it is for. But something as important as children's rights, we deserve a round of applause. Though we have come this far, we still have a lot to do. Children's rights are still being violated all over the world. It is sad, but it is also true. Children, you are fortunate to have this information that we have presented to you. For when I was your age, about children's rights, I had not one clue. The treaty that started this movement was established in 1989. We have certainly come a long way, but to relax, this certainly is not the time. I urge each and every one of you here to continue advocating for this fight. Tell me, don't you think our children deserve to have these rights? Education, for example, is a right so important to me. For are these children not our future leaders who will sign our future treaties? But a lot of the times we stress to our children the importance of education. But please don't forget the right to fun and recreation. Now, as this celebration continues, I pray the Lord these children to keep, not neglecting our responsibilities to nurture, for I do believe that the children are the future. So join me by standing. As we make a pledge today, honest and true, to always do what we can to protect the rights of every youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark, for such brief closing remarks. But before we leave, the participants for the summit tomorrow, which will be held at the St. Kitts Marriott Resort, you are asked to meet by the tent on my left for some refreshments, and after, meet at the tent with the steel pans to receive your shirts. This opening ceremony is being carried live via UNICEF's Facebook page, and it will be carried live tomorrow via SKN Vibes. For those persons who will be attending the summit tomorrow, the bus schedule is as follows. The bus will leave the Sadler's bus stop east at 7:45 a.m. heading Keon Way. Then it will stop at Parsons bus stop, that's west, 7:45 a.m. And
For East Sadler's bus stop, you will be there for 7:45, heading Keon Way. For West, we will start from Parsons, 7:45. That will be the school bus heading Sandy Point Way. St. Peter's, you should be at the Bass Bakery, the bus stop at the Bass Bakery. For 8:15, there will be a big banana bus. In Bastia, the old Marriott bus stop, opposite the courts on the Bay Road, and the bus stop at the fire station. For 8:15, there will be another banana bus. Participants who do not have a bus stop, you are asked to stop the school bus or the big banana bus whenever you see it.
so thank you for attending today's opening ceremony for the summit on the Convention of the Right of a Child. And we are so happy that so many of you from both St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as the contingent from Antigua and Barbuda, Montserrat, and Anguilla were able to attend. Also, the UNICEF representatives, we thank you for being here with us, as 30 years of anything is a significant milestone. We continue tomorrow at the St. Kitts Marriott Resort for the summit. So, after you meet at the tent, I am told we will be having some fireworks. So please stay behind for the fireworks. But just before you go, let's have 3 cheers for the Convention of the Rights of a Child, the 30th anniversary, and the summit tomorrow. Hip hip. Hip hip. Hip hip. I can't hear you. Hip hip. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your night.